This is the first episode of Terror Talks, which is a brand new YouTube series where we discuss what's going on in the horror world with people who are a part of the horror world and who love all things horror in the industry and stuff like that. So this is the first episode. So we have a very special first episode guest. So take it away. Who are you?
Hey, Noah. I'm Sam Wineman. I directed The Quiet Room, and I'm directing Shudder's upcoming queer horror documentary.
Impressive. Very exciting. Okay. So obviously there's a pandemic, so movie news has been kind of thin at times, but we had a bombshell recently that Gale Weathers will be returning to the Scream. I don't know if it's a reboot or a sequel, but she will be back.
And Gale Weathers, what a bombshell, indeed.
Exactly. So first off, how do you feel about the original actors like returning? Like, is that good? Is that bad? Are you skeptical? What's the deal with that?
The original Scream is obviously fantastic. I saw it at a drive-in the other night, and for Wes Craven's birthday, and the part, where Sidney Prescott punches Gale Weathers, that's how you know it's like this is gonna be good. And I think it's interesting because we talk about Sidney all the time as being this fierce final girl, and she is, but so is our girl Gale, right? Because she's been there the whole time, and Gale didn't forget the safety that time. You know what I mean? Like she has her own one-liners. She is essential to surviving, and it's fucking awesome to see her come back. Fingers crossed she gets the Scream 3 bangs.
Yeah, I mean, she has a different hairstyle, I think, in like every movie. That's what I distinctly remember. Because like, I watched those movies like years ago, and I just kind of went down the line, and she just kept popping up with different hair. And I was like, okay, that's cool. That's cool. Keep things fresh.
Each haircut is like, it's like the first one you're like, okay, that's kind of cool and like trashy tabloid. Second one's like, okay, a chunky highlight, I'm here for it. Third one is like fully unhinged bangs, like something went at it by herself and nobody stopped her. And then part 4, it's like they were so afraid that they'd get more bangs, they just like went easy. So I hope for part 5 we're getting like full like femme fatale bob or something, just like extreme mohawk.
Exactly. I mean, I think like so let's say you were doing the Scream sequel. It was you. How do you even approach something like this? Because like I feel like it's a pretty mixed kind of, because if they go the reboot way, you got all the fans who will whine that like, why are you kind of discontinuing all the plot we've already seen? But then if it's a sequel, then it might alienate people who weren't fans of the original things, and they have to get accustomed to these characters when everyone else is kind of situated with them already. So how would you approach making another Scream?
All right, well, like the answer is kind of in the new Halloween, because if you look at like, why did people go see the new Halloween?
It's Jamie Lee Curtis.
That's it. That is why we went to see it. That movie could be total trash and it doesn't matter because we have Jamie Lee coming back to kick ass. And as long as Scream understands that what it has is its surviving cast, like Scream doesn't have a ghost face. Or I'm sorry, no. Scream doesn't have like one singular killer. Scream has a surviving recurring cast of characters who are all friends, and we've gotten to know them over these years. So what we want to see is them come back and kick ass. We don't really care about the killers, where in other series, it's more about the killer.
Yeah, that's a good point. That it's literally one of the main slashers that it's more about the survivors than it is about the actual killer. And I think it's going to be interesting to kind of see what direction, because in the fourth movie, I haven't seen it in a really long time. Forgive me. That ends at a hospital, right? Like crazy stuff happens with Sydney. She survives. They make it out.
Clear.
So like where do you even go from there? Like I just feel like they're gonna have to. And I have complete faith in the directors. I mean, they did Ready or Not, which I thought was a super like inventive take on like a slasher-ish type of film. But like, do you have any predictions on where they could take Sydney and the gang?
See, it's crazy because like part 4 was a little bit ahead of its time because it's talking about social media and obviously the iconic line, "I don't need friends, I need fans." And now, at the time, that was like, it kind of saw it coming, where in Scream 2, they talked about Black people dying first, and it brought in that conversation. Scream 3 didn't really add too much to the conversation, but if you look back now, it was definitely a commentary on what was happening with Harvey Weinstein, who was one of the producers on it, and it was a Weinstein-esque story. So inside of Scream has always been this, Scream has always been a little bit ahead of the conversation. And so I would say, if we look at what's happening in horror now, and Scream is able to successfully make a commentary on it, that would be the most successful way to go. Like, if I were going to look at it, I would probably talk about metaphor horror, because I think that metaphor horror defines our generation. Like, what we need is like a scary movie, but all A24 like metaphor horror, you know, and we need that for this generation. Like, The Relic is caregiver horror, and The Babadook is all about, you know, PTSD or mourning. And so that's what defines us. It would be interesting if Scream commented on that while bringing back its surviving characters and allowing them to kick ass, and also giving Sydney a little bit more agency, because in the fourth movie, we all love Sydney, and Sydney just, her character didn't pop as much in the fourth as she had in the past. And Gil going through, like, hiding out in that, like, TikToker party, I don't know. It just, like, is that really, she's not.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely, if they're bringing these people back, they got to put them on a pedestal, and they got to give us what we want to see from them, and also do it in a way that's better than what we've seen in the prior sequels. I've seen a lot of people, like, debating, like, I bet they're just going to bring them back and kill them in the beginning. Like, they better not, because that, like, defeats the purpose of the Scream movies. And if they do that I don't think that'll be received very well.
I think if they do that, there would be a gross misunderstanding of the popularity, or what makes that film popular. And Screen Rant reported that Halloween 2018 strongly, like, the original ending strongly implied the death of both Laurie and Michael Myers. So, and then that they had tested it, and that it didn't do very well. And so they reshot it with more of, like, the house and luring him there in the ending that we know now, which was really exciting, as Ryan Turk had said, seeing 3 generations of Strodes facing off against Michael. We wanted to see all 3 of them kicking ass. Why an ending like that other ending wouldn't work is because it's not satisfying to a horror fan. But somehow it's like what we think we want to see. Like, if you think about Friday the 13th Part 2, we see this final girl survive, and in Part 2, she immediately gets murdered in her apartment. Also, in her apartment in a city. How did Michael get there? But like,
Jason, not Michael.
Oh, sorry. How did Jason get there?
That's a sin. That's a horror.
Wow,
that's a horror fan sin.
Yes. But yeah, she dies in her apartment, and Jason just, like, magically appears. But anyways, Friday the 13th. Oh man, you caught me, and now I don't want to keep. I'm flustered. Noah.
It's okay. I can edit it out.
I'm canceled.
Okay.
I'm canceled. Okay. But anyways, if Scream is smart, they'll learn a lesson from, you know, what Blumhouse learned with Halloween, and make sure that we're rooting for the final survivors instead of just killing them off.
Yeah. And I hope their approach to Ghostface, I really don't think they should establish a new Ghostface that'll return in, like, because I assume they're trying to kickstart another franchise. I would assume that's probably what maybe they're thinking of doing, similar to, like, Halloween. And I just hope they don't try and make Ghostface this, like, soul, like you said. He's always different, or she or he is always different. And I think they need to kind of continue with that kind of, he's a flexible slasher. Like, it's always someone else behind the mask. And I think that's really cool.
But the thing about Ghostface is, more than any other series, he's tied to Sydney, right?
Always,
like Ghostface is always after her because of her past or some sort of loose connection. So I think that's what makes the later sequels challenging, is how do you explicitly tie it with Sydney and still keep it interesting?
Yeah,
and still kill off everybody she knows.
maybe like it'll start with her. She's, like, with a whole new community, and then all her new friends start getting killed off, and then all the old cast comes back to like save the day, or I don't know, just some fan theories there. Okay, I think we've talked enough about Scream. I'm excited regardless. I'll watch it regardless of what happens there. So Host is the next topic. That movie was scary. Like I watched it on my laptop, so I was like on the Zoom call with them, and oh my God, the amount of like dangling legs I saw in that movie that freaked me out is, oh Jesus, that movie. I can't even believe that was done in such a short amount of time and it was so effective. Like it was just so effective. It wasn't like I feel like a lot of people would rush to come out with like something to cash in on like the whole quarantine kind of vibes everyone's dealing with. But this was a very like carefully thought out and really well executed small little horror film. I mean, I just think I would literally can't recommend it enough to any fans, honestly. I mean, everyone's living in this Zoom kind of world, so it'll immediately kind of tie into what people are kind of thinking and what their headspace is at the moment. But yeah, I really liked it.
Well, you know what's funny? I recently did a Comic-Con panel via Zoom, so for the queer horror doc that I'm directing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of feedback that I got from people online was like, oh, I'm going to get around to it, but just the idea of seeing everything in Zoom right now, I have Zoom fatigue. And I'm like, oh, I hadn't even thought of that. Like, because if you spend all of your day at work and all of your social interactions are through your computer, signing up to watch a movie where it all takes place through a computer is maybe feels like something you don't want to do. But Host is so fucking good that it's like it overrides all of that like Zoom fatigue because you're immediately in it. It's like this, they establish, to me, it's the best example of female friendship since The Descent. Like all of these women are believable. Like I feel like I know them and I understand their friend dynamics, and they give you that like creepy warning, like, hey, normally, you know, I do this seance in person, but you know, we're doing everything online now. And it's like,
especially in terms of performances, I forget the name of the character, but the one who fakes, spoiler alert. Yeah, spoiler alert. The one who fakes the story about her friend who died, I full on believed it. I full on believed that. I was like, wow, you know, this is a really emotional story, and the actor, they're doing so well. It's so good. It's so believable. I mean, it knows how to pull you in. And it was really effective. It was creepy.
So that actor is fucking phenomenal. I think all of the performances across the were really good. But that actor in particular, it's funny you bring her up because I felt the same way. Like I saw her and I was like, Gemma Moore, I need to see you in everything. I want to see, please cast her again and again. I believed her and the range that she gave us. And what I love about her is that she's flawed, but she's also like, it's like you're watching it and you're like, why would they be friends with this person? She doesn't take anything serious. But then you see why they're friends with her, because she's loyal and she'll fight for them. And she's
very loyal.
Yeah. And also that actor is openly pansexual. If you look at her, her Twitter, it has a rainbow and then it has 3 hearts for the pan flag. And I was like, yes, queer horror, Gemma.
Yeah, that's like, I just think that whole cast was just, I feel like they got as lucky as they could. I don't know how they like picked them or if they auditioned them, but I think they're all friends.
Did you see the short film it was based on? Like they like
something in the attic.
Yes, watch it, Noah. It's so good. And the director explained later that the cast it's all of the cast, and then some of the people in it were on the crew. Ended up being on the crew. Wow. So everybody in the short is involved in it, but it's like a minute and a half.
I think I saw part of it. Is it where he like climbs up and he falls down? And I think I saw part of it. I got to watch the whole thing. But I feel like there's been a ton of like Zoom horror movies that have been floating around Twitter. There's like a new short film every day, and I'm just like, you know, I don't know, but I think Host kind of proved that it can be a really effective medium, and it kind of has got me wanting to take a crack at it. But
so what do you think worked about Host that doesn't work in some of the other like quarantine horror that you've seen?
I just think Host definitely took the time to breathe. It let its characters breathe. It wasn't super focused already on getting you freaked out within the first couple seconds. You know, you really get to see that whole like establishing the characters, the fact that they're, you know, referencing the pandemic. It was just like strangely cathartic because we haven't seen on-screen characters living in the same world that we are, because there's been a ton of streaming releases, but they take place in like the before world. So it's kind of like this happy kind of like we kind of wishfully living through these fictional characters in these other movies, but then for this we're like, hey, like they're just like us. There, I mean, I love it. There's like one part where they do like an elbow exchange instead of hugging, and the masks, and I just think it was so cool to see something that literally could be taking place like simultaneously with life going on right now. And I think it adds to the realism, and it adds to the fear factor, because it's like I go on a Zoom call at night sometimes. What if this happens to me? Like, what if like I'm gonna be like staring into my monitor, looking in the background of my computer so that I can see if something's hiding there. Like, it definitely ties in. Like I said before, I just think this is one of the best examples of one of these things tying in to the fears and the atmosphere of the world right now, while also kind of throwing in supernatural aspects. Because in reality, like in this movie, there are two monsters. It's the disease and it's the ghost. And even after it ends, you know that they're still living through that other thing that's out there in the world that's not supernatural, which I think is really unsettling.
But it's also not even about the pandemic, which is why I think it succeeds. So it's like,
Yeah.
if you look at like, so Michael Myers and the entire Halloween franchise began on almost as a commentary on urban sprawl. And we
Yeah.
have suburban America when people are leaving their, you know, doors unlocked and the threat is in the city. But if you're in the suburbs, you're safe. So Michael Myers comes to where you live, and
Yeah.
that's the threat. And then in the 80s, we have all of this, which is, I talk about in my doc, but so much of it is, you know, people are living through the AIDS crisis, and so much of that is reflected in horror. And so now when we're talking about the pandemic and having there be a threat that is that you can't escape, I mean, Host is a metaphor that matches without being on the nose. And all of the pandemic references feel like they know us. Like that elbow bump moment, it got my heart, you know?
Yeah.
It's like
they're genuine. They're genuine.
It felt authentic. This is the world that I know. I wonder if now that Host exists, and because they knocked it out of the park, if anybody else is going to be able to do more Zoom horror, because they kind of nailed it. And after Blair Witch Project, we saw a lot of people attempt it, but did we see a lot more? You know,
well, Blair Witch 2, the Book of Shadows, was an extraordinary follow-up to Blair Witch.
Phenomenal, yeah.
What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so back to like Zoom horror. I mean, I've seen some people say like after hopefully this all washes over, this whole pandemic, they never want to see a Zoom screen again. Do you think something like this will age well in like 5 years when hopefully we're out of this? Do you think Host will still be as effective as it is today?
It's interesting because horror fans are always trying to set boundaries as to like what does and doesn't work. And I'm just somebody who my taste is just outside of the boundaries of what I'm supposed to like. I fucking love Urban Legends Final Cut, and that just hit Shudder, and I was like celebrating it. That movie's fucking awesome. It is for everybody.
I've never finished the first Urban Legend. I told you, but I was able to sit through the entire final cut, and I like that movie.
I like when a horror movie takes things that are outside of what we'd expect them to take and plays with those elements in a way that entertains us. I think Host does that so well, and it will always be a time capsule for this moment. And that's why it succeeds so much. We can look back and it nailed it down, right? Yeah. But I personally, I want to see it in a movie theater. I would see it.
A giant Zoom screen in front of you.
Why not? I mean, Unfriended was awesome. And now that's not everybody feels that way. I fucking love Unfriended. And why it succeeds so much is because Unfriended is specifically about that moment. It didn't try and be universal.
Yeah.
It didn't try to shy away from technology so it didn't age. Unfriended it exists, and it will always be a time capsule for that moment, as will the host. Or, sorry, as will host.
Host. Yeah. Yeah, definitely, I agree. It's a time capsule, and I think it's certainly left its mark already. Just based on what I see on social media, it's left its mark on just kind of horror history. It's now one of like the first found footage pandemic Zoom horrors, which I think is
Also,
really, really cool.
I will say, Host did some things because you can oversimplify something like Zoom horror as a category and be
Yeah.
like, yeah, but what about the cinematography? Host played with space like most horror films dream of playing with.
Yes.
The geography of that film, every shot has an open door somewhere behind. You dread anywhere that they move in that space because you don't know what's going to come from where. That's great filmmaking.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, that's one of the main things I noticed is each of the characters' backgrounds was very distinct and very unsettling in different ways. Especially the woman who did the seance. The background was terrifying. It was like a boiler and then some like dirty stuff. Like you couldn't really tell what was going on back there. But I don't know. It was really and the girl who is sitting in like the bright pink room with her like the candle right here and the door really close to her. It's just like a very claustrophobic space.
Yeah.
And then the other one who's sitting in her kitchen. It was really, really cool, especially the opening scene, which I thought was really interesting when she's just walking around with her computer, puts it down. She's like putting on socks or whatever. And it's just like, you're just kind of a fly on the wall, just like living with this character before she gets thrown into this terrifying nightmare, which I think really cool. Just one last thing. Did you have any favorite scares from the film?
Yeah, because I watched it. So I watched it I watched it the night it came out, and then I watched it the next night because I wanted to see it immediately and also show my boyfriend. It was that final scare without spoiling it for people because I screamed. I literally screamed, and that's not how I watch horror movies, but I couldn't help it, and the second time I saw it, I still screamed. And I was like, oh man, and I even knew how it was going to unravel. Halfway through the movie the first time, the scare with the blue ghost reveal, and it's kind of like through its hands. I got so freaked out that I had to like go into my hallway and turn on the light because I didn't want like a dark hallway outside my door.
Yeah,
for me, not a lot scares me. Something about that movie was so unsettling, and I think it was set up as soon as we saw the dangling legs in the attic. That got me, and I was like, all right, I'm in.
That to me is my favorite type of scare, the attic legs, because it's subtle, but it's right in front of your face, and the characters in the world aren't really reacting to it, so you feel scared for them because they're not doing the screaming and the running for you. You have to like feel that yourself. And the second I noticed those were legs, I was like, oh, okay, the ride is starting. So the part where Radina is walking with her laptop through the halls, and there's like a split second where you see the legs behind her, and no one notices except obviously the audience. And that scene just, even though it's such an insignificant scene, it's just a character like moving from one room to another. It's just like ingrained in my mind, just like grainy computer footage of like someone literally hanging from the ceiling in the darkness behind the character. Like that's scary to me. And of course the makeup on the monster itself was terrifying. For as little as you see it, it's horrifying.
The makeup mask, like the Snapchat filter one.
Yes.
Horrific. And it shouldn't be. It's such a simple idea, but it was so scary.
Yeah. And when it just moves and it looks at the that was like it felt very similar to Invisible Man when it starts walking and you see the footprints in the dust or whatever she had on the ground. I like that, and I love how the filter gets stuck on one of the characters' faces and they're hiding and they have like a lizard face. That also there's a shot that I assume is supposed to like kind of pay homage to Blair Witch when it's like this very up close shot of the character under the covers, and you like see up her nose a little bit. That just reminded me of Blair Witch, and that's also what's on the poster. And also that clown doll MVP, even though it doesn't really do anything, it was the MVP. I knew it was going to come back somehow.
Because it's a lot like Final Destination. They introduce all these elements and so well. Like when I'm watching a Final Destination movie, I'm always clocking like, all right, so this piece, and you're trying to figure out how it's going to happen. In Host, it's like they introduce these like, here's a creepy music box, here's a clown puppet, and I'm like, all right, what's going to happen? You know, and watching it, we had no idea what was going to end up where, but we knew that there were these elements of horror. The plants and payoff were so good.
Yeah, definitely. It knew what it was doing. It knew how to bring its audience along and keep the audience engaged and frightened whenever, you know, it was necessary. So yeah, Host. It's on Shudder. Watch it. You literally have no excuse. Anyone watching, it's like 55 minutes. Just do like the free Shudder trial if you don't have Shudder already, and just sit back and get terrified. So now, the final topic, your documentary. What can audiences expect? What can the fans expect? Because people are waiting for this. I see like a tweet every other day about people like, when is this Shudder documentary coming out? So what's the expectations here? What should people be expecting?
Horror has existed for so long with queer artists at the helm of so many of its greatest entries that I think for people who know about queer horror, there's still a lot to learn. And people who just have no idea how queer horror is, it's like, buckle up. We are going to take you for a ride. I think that it's going to be something where everybody can get something new out of it. Because even I went into it thinking I have a ton of knowledge about queer horror. It is something I'm passionate about. I have spent years studying it, and even in this process, I'm learning things that I had no idea were a part of our genre. So definitely audiences will learn that horror has always been queer. It's been queer from the very beginning. And I think a lot of our conversations end up being about how queer folks just got a seat at the table, or in a lot of ways it feels like we finally got a seat at the table. We're being actually put into the films that we love and put into the films that we consume as a genre. But actually, it's our table everybody else has been sitting at. And that's
Pretty
where
much,
I think it's going to really catch people off guard.
Yeah, I mean, because there are movies I didn't even know kind of fit under this. Like Lost Boys is one of my absolute favorite movies, and you helped me learn like it's definitely queer. It definitely has those elements, and I think a lot of people are gonna learn about the movies they already love and find another reason why they can appreciate it, and another reason why it can speak to them or speak to others, and how it can be viewed in kind of different perspectives. And I think that's probably the most important part of the documentary, and I think that's going to really open a lot of people's eyes. And I'm sure Shudder will have like a bunch of those movies to watch, so after they learn about them, they can dive back into them and rewatch them and look for kind of the things that were pointed out, kind of looking at it in a new lens, which is awesome. Really
and that's
cool.
why we love horror, right? I mean, horror gives us access to other people's lens. When we watch Host, I mean, I am not a woman. That is not my experience. And yet I am accessing the perspective of these women and their friendship and what that means to them as an outsider. And I'm learning just a little bit about their lives. And I think that watching a documentary where you get to reframe the horror that you already know and love from a different perspective is actually the act of what brings us to horror anyways. Yeah,
definitely. And I think that's also what Horror Noir did. And that was an excellent kind of entry into what hopefully is plenty of documentaries that kind of educate fans of the genre and how we can see the similar stories told from different perspectives with different elements that we wouldn't at first expect to see and experience. So, okay. What was the biggest challenge of the documentary, making it?
I think, you know, a lot of what happens in a documentary happens in post. So going into the documentary, I have my outline, I have my research, I know the things that I want to get. And then I begin to have conversations with the community about the things that are important to them, and I learn things. And then going back and looking at all of the footage, it's like there is a different story than maybe I originally set out to find. It's bigger, it's a lot more diverse. And I think that a lot of directors, like shooting anything, even just shooting a short film, there's the movie you made in your head, and then there's the actual footage, right? And with a documentary, it's there's more of that than anything, because it's not like each take is the same thing again and again, and you're just trying to find the best performance. It's like there is a mountain of knowledge, and how do I bring that to everybody in a way that's accessible? So I think the biggest challenge is actually just the edit and being able to make sure that everything that I feel strongly about is balanced with everything that people need from this doc. This isn't just like a documentary about one movie. This is a documentary that, like, it's really tough because this documentary means a lot to a lot of people. I mean, it means a lot to me. If I had had a movie like this growing up, maybe my whole life would be different. And I think for some people, they'll get to see this, and it will. A movie like this could mean opening doors for people. A movie like this could mean kicking down some of the gatekeepers, you know, knocking on studios' doors and saying, all right, it's time. With all of those things, there's a lot of pressure to get it right, especially when you're doing it first. So all I can do is tell the story I know and try and give a platform to as many voices as I possibly can while it's there. Because that's what queer horror is. It's community. It's not about me. It's about everybody that I can bring on board.
And I think, I believe that regardless, I think everyone's going to appreciate, all the people waiting for it are going to appreciate this, no matter what form it comes in or what story it tells. I think it's going to be big. That's my prediction.
Thank you.
So I don't know how much you can talk about this, but is there any kind of fun stories from set or interactions with anyone you had while making this film, with any subjects or filmmakers you can talk about?
Yeah, I think something that at least personally was really cool for me was interviewing Don Mancini, because he wrote the Child's Play films and directed Seed of Chucky, which is one of my favorites. But Child's Play was actually like kind of my first horror movie. So, I mean, I didn't watch it. I had my neighbor tell me about it, but whatever. And I got to tell, like, we were on set sitting down and I was going to interview Don, and I got to share that with him and be like, hey, this was like this is the way I accessed film, you know? And when I was younger, I went and saw Seed of Chucky in theaters with my friends, like every weekend, until it wasn't in theaters anymore. I mean, like, and for him, I know his perspective on Seed of Chucky was that it had been like an enormous letdown. And I got to share that, like, for me, that's part of why I'm making queer films. Like, it was instrumental in who I am. And it was the first time that I had looked at a screen and seen explicitly queer identity in horror. So being able to share that with him, like, it felt really powerful. And we actually talked about that a little bit in the Comic-Con panel as well.
That was just watching that. I was like, you're so lucky. Oh my God. You're like, it's full circle. Like, you get to speak to the person who kind of helped bring you into this creepy bubble of horror. Like, oh, that's so awesome. So awesome.
Yeah, it felt it felt like, you know, it was what was kind of cool. My parents were on set that day, and so they were watching the interview with Don. And there's something special about being able to share something so personal about your past and growing up and how it formed who you are in front of, you know, your parents. It's like, it was a really cool day on set. So the Clive interview was phenomenal because I didn't even know if we were going to be able to interview Clive Barker. He's had a lot of health problems, and so definitely didn't want to intrude on his space if it's not going to be something he can do. But he was so welcoming, and it was kind of cool. Like before we got started, he was like, I want to talk to you before we go into the interview. So I was like, okay. So I go into, and his house is full of his art, and it just feels like it's everything you think Clive Barker's house is going to look like. It just is inside. A master of horror lives here. You can feel it. And when I first sat down to talk to him, I was really nervous just because it's like, oh, what are we going to talk about? And I saw that he had the Cats soundtrack, like a CD of the Cats movie on. And so I was like, oh, did you see the Cats movie? And he's like, absolutely not. And I'm like, well, you have to. And so I got to like kind of open the door. So thank you, Cats. And Clive said that before I talked with him, he wanted to show me more of him and took me back to this room. Wow. And inside it was stacked with, thousands of paintings. Like paintings were stacked on paintings. It was incredible. And he took me through and showed me work that he had been doing for decades. And it reminded me a lot of myself, because when I was a kid I drew a lot of monsters, and they were colorful sometimes, and there was this one demon and it had like a bright neon like yellow and green background, and I was like, that is so cool. And I told him why, and he's like, well, if I gave it to you, would you hang it up? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, okay, grab it, I'll sign it and you can take it with you.
Oh my.
So that was before we even started the interview. So yeah, Clive was incredible, and that painting is definitely cursed, and it's hanging in my house. So someday that demon will come to life and greet me.
And you could be maybe you're the star of a Hellraiser reboot, which I'm sure will come sometime. I thought I saw something that he potentially was getting the rights back, but I don't know how credible that was. But I saw it floating around a couple weeks ago.
It would be pretty awesome to see that in his hands.
Yes, it would.
Well, I have a question. Have you been to the drive-in yet in 2020?
No, because my friends don't want to go. It's so annoying. I text them. They're like, I don't want to drive an hour for a movie. I'm like, that's not the point. Is it's an experience. It's not just seeing a movie. You're at the drive-in in 2020. My friends.
This year has been incredibly difficult, and for so many reasons. And obviously, things aren't going to just get better anytime soon. But one thing that has been like a spot of joy in my life is the drive-in, because I love drive-in movies. I had a drive-in close to me when I was a kid, and I used to drive. I still drive pretty far, but now there's no traffic. But it used to be such a trek to go, and now I've never seen drive-ins so full. Like, you have to get there an hour and a half early or you won't get a good spot. That's crazy. And if the one silver lining is that drive-ins are getting some love right now, it makes me really happy that we can find a way to safely socially distance and enjoy films and continue to get excited about new content. And horror has been leading the pack at drive-ins. And I think that's
dies tomorrow, right? That's one of the newer movies in drive-ins.
I haven't seen it.
It's good. It's weird, but it's good. It's very unsettling. It's creepy. But yeah, and then Relic was in drive-ins.
Mm-hmm.
That movie was intense.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully
Rental, The Wretched, The Rental, like, while they aren't my favorites, their fanfare for it has been wild to see. Like, it's been cool. It's been a good time to be a horror fan, just because the genre is still there for us. It's still appearing, and it's still a safe haven. And I think that it ties together with queer horror in a lot of ways, because for a lot of people who were queer, horror was a safe space growing up. It's a space where you can be other. And again, here we are. Things are really scary, and we're flocking to a drive-in to see something that scares us because it feels safe. I know I, for one, am grateful it's happening.
Yeah, I'm hoping when I get back to Austin, there's a drive-in maybe somewhere near there, because I gotta start going. I gotta start seeing some drive-in movies. But yeah.
Did you see that that Antebellum is going to move to a VOD release?
Yes, that's a good
So
point.
that's a big deal, because if Antebellum on VOD is successful, which I can't wait to see it.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
so
buying
fucking
that.
excited. If that can work, I mean, there's a lot of possibility, because the rental already did VOD and drive-in simultaneously, and that was the first time we saw a number one for both in theaters and VOD. Now, granted, theaters have changed because it's just drive-ins, but that's significant, and that it's like a thriller horror kind of film, also significant. If Annabelle pulls it off, maybe there's hope we'll get Candyman by.
That's what I'm thinking. I want Candyman. I mean, I think these studios are just waiting for, I think, one film to take the jump.
Yes.
And see if they can be successful. But then there's other movies that for some reason are like, I mean, I guess there are good reasons. I don't know the inner workings of like studios and all that stuff, but like the big ones like Tenet and Wonder Woman 84, like they are running for the hills away from like a video on demand release. But I think with horror, just because there's often a personal kind of connection with these movies, I'm hoping fans will be like more willing to purchase these like from the comfort of their home. I feel like, I mean, the movies that need, like, quote unquote need to be in theaters, I feel like are like the giant blockbusters, regardless of their quality. I think everyone loves to see like giant crazy special effects on a huge screen, but like stuff like Host, well, I think it would be good in a theater. I think there's something to be said about a more personal viewing experience. And I hope people come out for Antebellum and stream that and purchase it, because it looks really good. Those trailers are really, really cool, really unsettling.
I would pay, like, Mulan just announced, or Disney just announced that Mulan's going to be like $30, right? To stream it or to rent it.
Well, you need Disney Plus first.
Oh,
and then you pay $30.
Wow, what a move.
But strange.
Yeah. I'm saying, like, if it cost $30 to do Candyman, if I had to have, I don't know, Shudder and then $30 for Candyman, I'd fucking do it. Because I want to see that so bad, and I know so many horror fans want to see it. So I've got my fingers crossed that model does prove to be financially successful, because I want to see this stuff, and there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, and Nia DaCosta just got, I don't know if it's confirmed, but she just got signed on potentially to direct Captain Marvel 2, like a huge Marvel movie. Like the trades like reported it, but I don't think she has acknowledged it online. Like she's been talking about other stuff. So I don't know if it's true or not, but like there's been some pretty credible like sources posting about it. But that must mean that Candyman is unbelievable, or she's just incredible to work with, or both. I hope both. But like from Candyman, an iconic character, to then Marvel, I mean, that's an amazing career jump and a career kind of transition. So I've been looking forward to Candyman so long. I think Candyman, Black Christmas, those are like those slashers that were like so there's so much like meat to them, you know, like they're so polished, they're so awesome. And those other slashers like Friday the 13th, they're great in their own ways too, but I think there's something really special about the films like Candyman and Black Christmas. Some of those, also The Burning was really good.
And so are the shorts that take place in it. I fucking love The Burning.
Yes, I watched it recently on Shudder, and I was like, this is wicked cool. Especially the raft scene where they just get obliterated in slow motion.
It's
amazing.
Flawless. I would say, did you see that the number one movie on Letterboxd this week was Host?
Yeah, I mean, it's been,
So, that's a big deal, though, because if that's the number one most talked about film, that across all genres, that's a big deal. That means, because this is a movie that's exclusive to streaming. So exclusive to Shudder, a horror streaming website, and yet it's still the number one most talked about film. That's a big fucking deal. And it's a big deal for horror, because it shows that there is there is a future in streaming horror.
Oh yes.
So I think it's been kind of a big week. And
Yeah.
I think on top of that, if we can see if something like Host can be that successful on Shudder, what does that mean for every streaming platform? What does that mean for low budget horror in general? I mean, we've been seeing the Blumhouse model working for so long, but we're in a new world, and maybe it's time for a new model.
A new model, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think just seeing people go crazy for a movie like this during this time, it's been so kind of refreshing, because like there's not much going on in terms of like crazy theatrical releases, but seeing this be one of the most talked about movies of maybe like the last couple months is so amazing, and the fact that it's horror is even better. Like it feels like there's something to talk about, there's something to kind of gush over, which is awesome. And I think it's great that it's on Shudder. It's great that, I mean, I think Shudder's been killing it with a lot of their original like releases. I know La Llorona just dropped, and I heard it's really good.
I haven't seen it. I want to so bad.
I'm definitely looking forward to checking out what's coming out in the next few weeks. I know Lovecraft Country is coming out. I'm really excited for that. The HBO show. That's going to be really, really cool. It's from Misha Green, and I guess J.J. Abrams helped too. But yeah, it's got like Cthulhu and all sorts of freaky stuff in it. So I'm excited for that.
Speaking of movies that dropped straight to VOD, did you see Blumhouse's You Should Have Left?
No, and I wanted, because movie night, I wanted to. I wasn't around last night, but when you posted that, I was like, damn it, I'm gonna miss this. I've heard, yeah. Is it worth a venture?
Here's the thing, I know it's getting panned. The opening scene, I think, is so terrifying. If anything, watch the opening scene and see if that pulls you in. Because if it does, I found like the opening scene and like the end of the second act to be scary enough that it was worth a watch for me. This little girl, Avery Essex, my God, slays. She knocks it out of the park. And like, I'm convinced that she's just reading Kevin Bacon to filth. Like, he says things and she just looks at him. And this could be just like a totally queer perspective, but like when I watch heterosexual horror, like this is a hetero horror film. Like this is a
is that what your
couple.
Is that what your tweet meant?
That wasn't my tweet, although I almost did tweet about this and hetero horror, because this and Room on Shudder both had really entertaining parts of it, but it's like, this is what straight people are afraid of. Hetero horror is always like, there's always like a straight white couple and one of them cheated, and at some point throughout the film, it's revealed. It's always about cheating. There's always some kid caught up in it. It's like, and that feeling of being trapped in a marriage, because I think like, I don't know, maybe straight people are just afraid of, like, it's always the same fears. It's like, so when I watch that, I'm like, you know, watching that with a group of like 10 queer friends, like I did last night, it was like, this is perfect. Because it's like popcorn to me.
Yeah, and would you say it's better than The Rental?
Yeah, it is better than The Rental. I didn't really enjoy The Rental. So, I don't know. Did you like it?
I didn't see it. I didn't see The Rental.
I mean, I'll say like I think the premise of The Rental was really cool. And I love the cast in The Rental. But I like a little camp, and The Rental's so serious. And like, You Should Have Left is like, that movie knows what it is.
That's intriguing. That's intriguing enough for me to, okay. It's only $6 to rent. I might take it for a spin.
No, you know?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you know, I had a good time. You know.
Honestly, yeah. So thank you so much. I would talk more, but I think my AirPods are dying.
Good.
Even though I charged them before this, because I knew they were gonna try and die on me.
Because I talked your ears off.
No, it's okay. I'm totally okay with you talking my ears off. Yeah. Thank you so much. This was fun. If you wanna, throw out your like social media handles or anything so people can find you on whatever.
Yeah, I need more people to find me so that I can mute them. Whenever I tweet shit, I swear, like anytime, like after the Comic-Con panel, there are like a ton more followers, and then
Oh
all of them
God.
are just mad. Because
I
all I do is tweet about like, queer horror stuff. So if you're into queer horror, I'm at Sam Wineman on Instagram and Twitter. And if you're not, like, don't follow me. You will not be happy.